1,500 Iranian nationals were encountered at the southern border. What we know right now, at least half were paroled into the country. We don't even know who these individuals are, but they're paroled. The gotaways is even worse, Vince. That's what you were talking about. So we don't know the true number on the gotaways. But I think it's alarming that I'm already getting alerts from Texas DPS and U.S. Border Patrol saying we're seeing a surge of special interest aliens right now.
The opinions of the guests and host are their own and do not represent the opinions of IRONCLAD, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
Welcome to Borderland Narcosis, an Ironclad original presented by Phorm. Go get your Phorm supplements at phorm.com/borderland. My next guest is Jorge Ventura. You guys know who he is. He's been on the show several times. He brings us some new information about a mosque that is in Mexico, just about a couple blocks away from America, that's housed some Iranian nationals. And we talk about special interest individuals as well. So you guys check it out. Dude, you were talking about some travel to Mexico. You had someone who informed you on some information that you wanted to try and get down to. So you actually traveled directly into Mexico. And something about a mosque along the Mexican border that sources would say is connected to special interest aliens. Please tell me more about that.
Yeah, so right now, obviously, the our country's in a war with Iran, and just for the audience, you're probably seeing a lot of reporting now on the threat of Iranian sleeper cells. And actually, Vince, just coming on your show for the past kind of couple years, um, your audience is probably very familiar with this issue because we've been talking about it strictly from the southern border. Under the Biden administration, the amount of special interest aliens that entered illegally is alarming, but also the amount of special interests that entered as gotaways, I think, is the more scary number because that we don't know. And when we say special interest aliens, these are individuals coming from countries that are state sponsors of terrorism, not friendly to the United States. Many of these individuals also have like sketchy travel patterns. And they're not just coming from Iran, right? They come from Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Uzbekistan. And the other one that I'm really trying to highlight that people forget is China. There's also Chinese sleeper cells um, inside the United States. So essentially, this national security issue really started back in 2021 when Biden essentially opened up the border. He allowed tens of thousands of special interest aliens into the country. But the number one location that we've been trying to focus on is the California border, particularly that San Diego corridor with Tecate all the way to Jacumba Hot Springs, California. That's where they flooded the Mexican cartels, special interest aliens by the tens of thousands every single day from literally migrants from all over the world that actually gained the system in Mexico. And I'll kind of break that down. And then were smuggled into the country. So basically, as soon as we got into a war, I already knew this was going to be a real threat to our country because of all the special interests that are already in that are already into the country. I got tipped by a national security source who says, Jorge, there's an Islamic mosque in Tijuana. He says it's only 2 blocks away from the US Mexico border. He says the issue with this mosque is that it had harbored special interest aliens who then cartels had then brought those individuals into the United States illegally. So he was basically reaching out saying, hey, I'm concerned that now that we're in war, this mosque could be bringing in individuals that could either A, be connected with Hezbollah, ISIS, or other terrorist groups now looking to seek retaliation into the United States. I was shocked that the mosque was actually just 2 blocks away from American soil. I was also connected with another American resident, Corey Gutterow, who lives on the California border. I know you guys have mentioned his work here, and he's actually collected a lot of those IDs where the special interest aliens will destroy those IDs on the border before they're smuggled in. So we were already making the kind of the connections in the rounds. But yeah, about a few weeks ago, I went with a source, crossed into Mexico, went straight to that mosque, and to my surprise, there was a bunch of individuals all from Somalia and East Africa
That's what I was
outside the mosque.
wondering.
Yeah, so people were actually outside the mosque, and the people I ran into were from Somalia and East Africa. There were women too. They were obviously like wrapped up in the burqa, and some of the individuals talked to me, said, "Hey, we just had a guy from Iran come like last week, and he's basically staying here. And what that means is the individuals that stay there, they only stay there between a day and a month. So that individual from Iran literally just arrived while we're at war. He's considered a special interest alien, and at some point, the Mexican cartel is going to move that individual into the country. And what the audience needs to know too is these special interest aliens are willing to pay up to $50,000 per
What I was gonna
head
ask.
to be smuggled in. So there's that connection too. So we went to this mosque, got a bunch of video of it, interviewed a bunch of the migrants. The directors did not want to talk to me at all. We just all we want to do is ask them questions like, "Do you guys have like a security process?" Because while Iran is friendly with Mexico, and yes, that's great, they're not friendly to the United States. And you guys happen to have a mosque that's 2 blocks away from our American border. I already got from my sources and also through Corey's reporting too that individuals that who are special interest aliens have already been harbored at this mosque, have already been crossing illegally into the United States as gotaways, but they didn't want to ask any questions at all. The other quick little tidbit I want to add in real quick, Vince, and I'm kind of on a wrap. I kind of want to break down the story is the and you know this too, Vince. The explosion of special interest aliens on the southern border happened right in 2022. Now, some of the special interest aliens started to trickle in 2021, but the big explosion on the southern border happened in 2022. That Islamic mosque, its first year in its establishment and operation, 2022. So when that mosque was also built, that special interest aliens on the California border specifically went up drastically. I believe after 2022, special interest aliens, I think they ended up in the 300s every single year. And according to the former Border Patrol chief at the San Diego sector, he says that they were never allowed to release SIA numbers to the public. And I'm sure, Vince, you probably know more than that than I do.
Yeah, I mean, and let me just tie up a few things just for the audience. And this is fascinating, and you answered every question I was gonna ask you for how long it's been there and everything. So, thank you for that. So Cody Goodrow, he's part of the GOAT Initiative. They're
Mhm.
the ones who've been reporting on this for a while. Like we've tried it, we've had him on the show. We've had a couple of his also partners onto the show, and that's where I first seen it. I went to the site. I saw all the documents that he's been collecting. I'm talking thousands of special interests, thousands. It's scary to see how many he's collected, and still no concern from anyone outside of in any three-letter agency. No one's ever done
Right.
anything about his initiative, which is something that we always try and bring attention to. The other side of it is the gotaways. Those gotaways, those who are listening probably don't know that terminology. You might have missed it throughout the years. All that is the way the Border Patrol reports people that they cannot identify. Either they have been captured or they've gotten away. So what happens is you track footprints, and when you see the footprints go from the border fence to a road and it doesn't cross that road, that is determined to be a gotaway. They've been picked up. And so once a border agent cannot further push the sign or push the tracks, they will consider that a gotaway, and they'll actually mark that. That is something that they report as Border Patrol agents. And throughout the Biden era, I'm talking we were in the millions, man. It was a very scary number. On top of that, so when you were talking about the Border Patrol, yeah, for some reason during those years of the Biden administration, the Border Patrol was kind of held at a tight lip. They weren't allowed to talk about any of the special interests immigrants that were captured by them. So when you would capture four Afghanis, whatever, that had backgrounds in identified as terrorists, they were not allowed to put that on social media. When they were starting to ramp up their social media, for some reason, that was what they were not allowed, because it started to cause a ruffle, right? Ruffle a lot of feathers. And so from higher ups, I mean, even higher than the Border Patrol chief himself, I'm talking like
Wow.
higher than that, was asked to not mention the special interest aliens. Why? I don't know. That's concerning, right? And so that's what happened during that time. So the Border Patrol felt they were uncomfortable about the idea that they were just kind of being they were kind of being hushed, right? Like you can't tell, but they wanted to. The Border Patrol themselves wanted to tell the truth. They were trying to get it out there, and it was impossible to do. And so that was a crazy time for me when I was working for them at the time. And I was like, why are we not allowed to say this very interesting information? And every time they tried to, they got stonewalled. So just crazy to hear your side of it, because then I know my side of it. And now I'm like, man,
Yes.
this is even wilder. You know what I mean? And knowing that that mosque has been open since 2022, man, that was seriously a big time for special interests to coming across, especially in that area, man.
And the thing is that Tijuana corridor is so important to the smuggling connection because normally, the special interest aliens, from at least from my reporting, is a lot of them flew to Nicaragua. Nicaragua does not require a travel visa for a lot of the Middle Eastern migrants. They're really friendly um, to all these countries because they know that these individuals are coming to the United States, and Nicaragua would love nothing more than to destabilize the United States in any way that they could. So Nicaragua is a key country in this whole smuggling pattern. The government of Mexico, actually, guys, what I wanted to talk about too was the day that I was filming the report. So the day that I was on the ground with Corey, and we go to Mexico and put the report together. Um, Texas DPS Lieutenant Chris Oliveris gives me a ring. He says, "Jorge, I know you're working on special interest aliens in California." He says, "But I'm in Starr County in South Texas." He says, "I just arrested a Pakistani national who attempted to be a getaway." He says, "This is concerning that we're arresting a Pakistani national in Starr County." He says, "We never see any special interest aliens now under Trump 2.0." He says, "Not only is it concerning that I ran into this Pakistani national," he says his identification, he got issued a permanent resident ID by the Mexican government. Now, there's two things here. It's either the Mexican government issued this individual a legit permanent resident identification. And just for your audience who might not know why this is a big deal, this allows essentially illegals in Mexico to travel freely, and eventually they'll reach the northern Mexico. So they'll reach like a Tijuana, or they'll reach like a Eagle, like a Pedes Negras, and they'll cross illegally. So this permanent residence is really key because it gives them the free travel through Mexico, so they're not stopped by authorities or anything like that. Either this Pakistani national got a legit permanent resident issued by Mexican government, and then the Mexican government knows this individual was going to cross illegally into the United States, or the cartel somehow got this individual fraudulent permanent ID, and then the cartel must have made some deals with authorities saying, "Hey, when you run into this particular individual from Pakistan, let him pass." So there's already a system right now that we're seeing in Mexico where they're giving these permanent resident IDs to the special interest aliens. But the day that we were putting out this report, it was alarming because Texas DPS is the one that came across this Pakistani national. Some exclusive information that at least I got from my end, Vince, that I can at least give your audience right now, is that I know is in the first 2 weeks of March. So this means, like I said, the first 2 weeks of March while we're at war, U.S. Border Patrol, I know, encountered at least already a little over 300 Iranian nationals. Why are we seeing the surge of Iranian nationals right now when we're at war, when under Trump 2.0, authorities are barely seeing any special interest aliens? So I spoke to a U.S. Border Patrol source who says, "Hey, Jorge, around 307 Iranian nationals we've already encountered on the southern border in the first kind of couple weeks of war." Now, the key difference between Trump and Biden is that these Iranian nationals will not be paroled into the United States. Under Biden, if you guys remember, between 2021 and 2024, 1,500 Iranian nationals were encountered at the southern border. Well, we know right now, at least half were paroled into the country. We don't even know who these individuals are, but they're paroled. The gotaways is even worse, man. So that's what you were talking about. So we don't know the true number on the gotaways. But I think it's alarming that I'm already getting alerts from Texas DPS and U.S. Border Patrol saying we're seeing a surge of special interest aliens right now.
Man, that's wild. So it's funny because like I don't get too wrapped around this. I don't get too nervous because I don't know, maybe because I'm trained about it. I don't know. But my wife is starting to see the news. My wife is reading everything and she's getting extremely nervous about it. And now when I hear these numbers, I'm like, man, this is a serious time we're living in.
This episode is brought to you by Phorm, a company that I've been proud to work with for over 11 years. I don't say this lightly. These guys aren't just about supplements. They're about building a community, holding you accountable, and helping people actually change their lives. Their products are top-notch, third-party tested, and designed to help you perform harder, recover faster, and feel your best. And if you haven't tried their protein sticks, well, you're missing out. They're great, packed with protein, convenient, and ridiculously good. Right now, they have an exclusive deal for Borderland listeners. Buy any Phorm product and you'll get a free 5-pack of protein sticks with your order. Head to firstform.com/Borderland to claim your free pack while supplies last. Again, that's firstform.com/Borderland. Purchase any product and get a free 5-pack of protein sticks. Trust me, they're worth it.
Let me ask you a question here. Have you been able to identify which cartel was supporting that mosque? Is there a specific cartel that's kind of using it, or is everyone kind of that's a kind of like everyone uses it whenever they need to?
So essentially, the way it works down, especially like in TJ, is the two strongholds is the Sinaloa cartel and then CJNG. Now, what people need to understand is like when you're on the ground in Tijuana, it's not going to be those exact cartels running on the ground. They have those splinter groups that they have operate. So those two cartels actually have kind of different smuggling networks that they use. Some of them will actually use where they'll require the special interest alien to fly directly to the Tijuana airport. Normally, that special interest alien would then be coming from Puerto Vallarta to TJ, and they'll literally just pick them up from the airport and then take them into Tecate, Mexico, and then smuggle them in the deserts. That's where Corey's been collecting all those identifications that have been destroyed. The other one is the Mosque, so they'll be harbored there for about a day to a month, and at some point, the cartel will move that individual. So it's different smuggling groups taking advantage of this. But the key detail here um, is just that they're getting the permanent IDs issued. Another thing that I kind of just found just reporting on this that I just found interesting that I had no idea about that. Uh, Iran's also largest embassy is in Mexico, a country that they do no trade with, little to no trade with. They don't do any like oil shipments to each other. But the largest embassy of Iran happens to be in Mexico.
What,
So
what
there's
city?
also what was that?
What city is that?
It's in Mexico City, and the concern from national security experts that I got also connected with the Mosque is you have individuals that have connections with Hezbollah working in the embassy, issuing either permanent IDs or anything else that these special interest aliens need. So that's why when it comes to the Iranian sleeper cell story, I personally think corporate media misses the mark a lot. And what I mean by that is when you miss the mark, you throw the American public off. And like my first example was that is ABC News reported a story that like California could be hit by an Iranian drone. Not saying that that isn't realistic or anything like that, but it was published like if it was like a real threat when we learned that it was an unverified tip. So essentially, when the American public reads something like that, they don't take any threat serious after that. The real threat, and that's one thing that we're trying to highlight in the reporting, is all through the southern border, and it's not just individuals from Iran. We forget Iran and China also have a very cozy relationship. We're seeing that relationship right now play out throughout the war. We forget that there's also tens of thousands of Chinese nationals in the country, so there's also Chinese sleeper cells. I know this issue is kind of back in the news right now because the whole birthright with SCOTUS, and there's that whole thing. And for Americans who don't know, there's this whole business in China, the whole birthright tourism, where like they literally just get Chinese women pregnant, send them to some territorial island like Guam, and as long as they can have that baby on that soil, that baby's a U.S. citizen. And we've seen the Mexican cartels take advantage of this as well. But the real threat, and one thing that we continue to highlight, is on the southern border with the Iranian sleeper cells and the fact that they destroy their identification. You got the Mexico government playing a huge role. Cartels are making a lot of money. There's just a lot of connections here. And once again, it's not just Iran, guys, and those individuals. Like there's a bunch of tens of thousands of Chinese sleeper cells, also in the United States. And these individuals are very close to the Middle East. They have a very cozy relationship with Iran. And think about this, Vince, like all of our enemies, like right now, China is our number one enemy. We don't have like a Christian church on like the border of China where like we're smuggling Americans into China where like that's happening here. Like we have an Islamic mosque that we know that has harbored special interest aliens, and it's just
Yeah.
operating 2 blocks away from the border. I haven't heard Cash Patel, an FBI director, I haven't heard anyone talk about it. I don't even know if they even know the true numbers of special interest aliens into the country. I've been speaking with Republicans, bro, who are like, "Why are we arresting the tamale lady? We should be going after like all these sleeper cells, right?" So, there's also like a lot of frustration within the base of like, do we even know how many of these individuals are in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's such a crazy thing, man. What I find interesting is that during 9/11, there was some communication between the CIA and some some cartel leaders in saying, hey, at that point during 9/11, don't allow anyone from one of these countries, right? No Middle Easterns come through the border. So there was almost a partnership, right? And somehow, the cartel still works as a business. So at that point, it was
Right.
like, okay, at what point did that flip, right? At what point does the cartel say, no, man, we're going to start allowing them in? It's because the money? Is it because of the $50,000 per head? Is that why the cartel is? Why would the cartel, in my opinion, why would the cartel be okay with this, right? We're still a neighboring border, right? And what affects us potentially affects them. So it's kind of confusing to me that I'm like, look, I'm not saying we need to have this cordial relationship where we're all, in cahoots, but for a while it kind of was that, right? You do your drugs, we'll stop what we can, and everyone kind of lives kind of homeostasis in this really weird cartel space, right? But now, when you start seeing cartels supporting the terrorist organizations that have a threat to America, that becomes like, well, what are you doing?
Bro, it feels like kind of like the fentanyl changed the game because cartels in the Middle East have always had a cozy relationship. I remember I had a friend who was an investigative reporter who went into Mexico and he was alarmed about a lot of the cartel guns had pictures like of Osama bin Laden on them, and so he found out that like the cartels idolized anyone that basically went against the U.S. government. So the cartels
That's
always idolized ISIS, Hezbollah, and they also idolize cartels too, because they got the brutal tactic of beheading from Mexican cartel. So it was so they always had that relationship, but then China obviously when they came in with the fentanyl precursors, that changed the game and the way that Chinese could launder money for them. So we saw that relationship change. Um, I think I was the first reporter back in 2022. I remember I get a call, same thing, Texas DPS, Lieutenant Chris Oliveras. I think he was in McAllen. He calls me 2022, goes, Jorge, we've never seen this before. He's like, we have, and I'll never forget the words. He says, we got a 900% spike of Chinese nationals in McAllen. He's like, and we can't talk to them. He's like, get down here. So, that is when I started learning about the loophole of how Chinese spy to countries with no visa requires. At that time was Ecuador. At that time, Ecuadorian gangs were making a cash cow from Chinese. Even the Mexicans were they were maximizing profits. So it seems like once the chemical precursors came in, that relationship got extremely cozy. Then we have the illegal marijuana angle that I cover a lot on your show, Vince. But I would right now expect more of these individuals from the Middle East to continue to come into Mexico, especially Nicaragua. If Nicaragua continues to allow these individuals to come in, the country of Turkey also plays a huge role. For those who don't know, Turkey issues tons of fraudulent passports and identifications to all these type of individuals. Turkey plays a massive, massive role, but Nicaragua is making a bank from all these Middle Eastern individuals flying into the country. I remember when I was on the border back in like 2023, I ran into a Cuban national, and the Cuban was telling me, he says, "Hey, Jorge, like a one-way ticket from Cuba to Nicaragua is $6,000." And I go, "Why is this so much?" He goes, "Because the Nicaraguan officials know that when an individual from Cuba flies to Nicaragua, that they're never coming back, that they're basically going to the U.S." So basically, it's almost like it's a system, and it's almost like our country's a laughing stock for all these countries. Like
yeah.
Mexico's making bank. They're issuing all these visas to our enemies. All these other countries are allowing special interest aliens to be harbored in their countries, to be transported, to make their way illegally into the United States. So I would like to see more pressure from Mexico. I mean, from the United States on Mexico. I know right now there's a huge emphasis on the fentanyl crackdown and getting those numbers up and turning over
Yeah.
cartel leaders. And I'm not saying that's not important. Um, but when it comes to, once again, illegal immigration, and I think, that it's kind of gotten out of the headlines because obviously we're not getting the mass numbers that we started fighting in those big crowds. But um, Mexico's still not doing enough to crack down on the special interest pipeline. Like I think that's still a huge concern, especially as Americans. Like we don't want these
Yeah.
individuals in the country. We don't know who they are, why they destroyed their identification, and can we please get some type of investigation on this mosque? I don't know if that looks like a joint operation with Mexico, but this should be on our radar. And like I said, when I arrived there a couple weeks ago, there was an individual from Iran who just got there. So it's like, how did he get there so quick when his country's in the middle of a war? I don't
Yeah.
know. And at some point, that guy is gonna trying to make it into the United States illegally,
Or if he's not already.
or is that all
Because the
right? Yep.
scary part about the San Diego sector area, it is known for the most tunnel activity.
Oh, that's
And
right.
that is the craziest thing because those tunnels go unidentified for years. And like when people talk about numbers, like, oh, the numbers are down. Are they? We'll never really know because the tunnel activity in San Diego, you can pass. I mean, those are the size of a man walking, right? You can pass as many people as you want through tunnels like that. So that individual who started at that mosque potentially went through a tunnel is already here in America doing whatever he wants. That's the scariest part of the San Diego sector, tunnels.
The older I get, the more I realize that sleep isn't a luxury, it is a maintenance. If I don't recover, I'm not at my best, period. I don't usually talk about mattresses, but I've been sleeping on a Ghost Bed Luxe Hybrid for a few weeks now, and it's awesome. What I've noticed first was my support. My back pain has improved. I'm a big boy, and so I need that support. It's American-made, family-owned, and a lot of the team behind it are veterans, and I respect them. They've got a 101-night trial and a 20-year warranty so that you can actually try it and see if it works for you. If you're not sure which model fits, their mattress quiz makes it easy. To check out GhostBed, go to ghostbed.com/ironclad. You'll get an extra 15% off automatically with code IRONCLAD. Thanks again to GhostBed for partnering with us.
Or I don't know, Vince, if you ever talked to agents in that sector, but I don't know, did they ever talk to you under Biden, like just the challenges that they had when they even just encountered someone who was special
Yeah.
interest?
Oh, all the time. During that time, I was actually working for the border in the Stratcom, right, in strategic communications. And so I was there filming it. I have a video of like 40 different Indians coming across. They traveled. It took them 30 days eventually, right, from the path that they took. They got into the San Diego sector, and then they just get their NTA. And their notice to
Oh, that's
appear
right.
at that time, the notice to appear at that time only took it was 3 to 6 years. It was starting to kind of because it was so many numbers. And yeah, they just get welcomed into the country, right? All they had to do was provide one thing, was an address in America that they were going to be at potentially. And that's it. And so that was during the CBP1 era. That was during, the app where they were kind of like self-identifying. They'd show up and just show their little app and you just scan it and like, oh, they already processed themselves. And then yeah, it's great. They process themselves, they get their little paper, and they take off. That was the time when all the buses were loading up in these like very low, like people were trying to keep it down, but there were so many bodies at the time that were circulating, and they were just doing their paperwork, and they were getting processed and bust out. Agents were uncomfortable with that. Agents all over. I'm talking every agency was uncomfortable with the way that process was working because, yeah, these special interest individuals were not getting like targeted, not getting identified even more. It was just like, oh, okay, cool. Someone from Pakistan. Sounds good.
Insane.
Boom.
You know
There
what?
was there was a few things. I'll say I'll credit to this. They still roll fingerprints, right? You still roll fingerprints. They still run through systems. And if those systems can identify those people through the fingerprints, that means that they've had to been part of a country that used that same system or previously into this country where we've been able to
Mm.
identify them previously, or else it's irrelevant, right? And a lot of these countries are removing their identification intentionally because most of the countries won't repatriate their own citizens without proof of their identification. That's why China at the time was not taking anyone back. They knew that. China was like, we're not taking, we don't know if they're Chinese. They can say whoever they want. So if you didn't have proof of their actual identification, China would not repatriate. So it was kind of a loophole that we got stuck with. They were like, well, what do we do with them? And there was nothing we can do. It was kind of a standstill. Eventually, they were able to kind of work that out with China. But for years, dude, we could not repatriate Chinese citizens without proof of their identification. So that's why they were destroying them on the borders.
Dude, I had no. This is amazing. Yeah, dude, I had no idea. See, that's another loophole. It is
Yes.
just
And, and,
jammed, and
and countries support, like countries go with it, right? The countries are going. So it's even weirder, man. Yeah, the whole
dude, what?
conversation
You know
is
what,
so
Vince?
insane.
It's crazy. Even though I covered the border all the years under Biden, like even hearing you talk about the CBP1 and how like they process themselves, kind of sounds ridiculous, right? Like when you're saying it out
Well,
loud, like
Well, there's yeah, that time was nuts because you'd go out there to the border. I was even down in Ajo, right? And 400 people a night would kind of come through the border. 400 in a night. Like it was the craziest thing to watch. And I'm filming it, and they would show up with their iPhones and just like showing you the app, and you just scan their little app, and their name is You know what I mean? It actually made the process for Border Patrol a lot easier because they didn't have to do all the paperwork, right? It was just right there. But it's like, oh man, this app is kind of wild. They're filling this out in their own country. They're walking across the border and saying, "Here, I have my papers." And I was like, "Wow, that's like, why would we do that?" It was just it was an interesting thing to me. On their side of the fence, right? The Biden administration was saying, "Hey, we're helping these people claim asylum." But during my time as an agent, there's only a certain amount of countries you allow to claim asylum, right? There's a reason for persecution, for the countries destabilized, whatever the case. But during the Biden administration, everyone was allowed to claim asylum. And so there's another loophole during that time. And that's what made it tough because all they had to do was fill out their CBP-1 app and say asylum seeker, fear of persecution, fear of going back to my country, whatever the case, right? And then they were okay, cool, that's good enough for me. So, and then they're given the NTA, right? The notice to appear.
Yep.
And then all that means is like, okay, I don't know, it's not my position, but the immigration judge will make a determination on your case 5, 6 years down the road. At that point, if they have a child with an American citizen, okay, now they have another reason why they can fight to stay in America. And I'm not saying it's wrong or whatever. I'm just saying these are the loopholes that our own immigration has, and we all know it. And so do they. And so they can kind of abuse the system. This is why
Dude.
during that time was a tough one for me to watch because I was like, oh, this is kind of crazy. We don't have enough immigration judges to support this, right? That's really what happened. We didn't have enough immigration judges to support the influx of mass immigration that the Biden administration was allowing.
I remember, bro, I think it was like 2023, 2022, whatever. I'm in El Paso, and then I'm doing the interviews with the Venezuelans that just got like released and they're on the street, and they're showing me their NTA. And then I started, I think, like I said, this was 2022. I was seeing 2027, 2028. I saw another guy that have a court date to 2029. I was like, what? And they were like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to Denver, but I don't have court date for 7 years. And I
We
remember
saw
going, yeah, and I
we
remember
saw
going to my audience and kind of trying to explain to the public. I'm like, hey guys, just letting you know, they crossed illegally into the United States, but now that they have an NTA, like they're
Yeah, they're
technically
considered to
legally allowed
legal
to be here.
status. Yeah, they're considered to have legal status at that time because they have an NTA. Now, something of interest that most people probably wouldn't know, just because they have legal status means doesn't mean that they're welcome to do whatever. If they break the law, then at that point they have to change that we as a government will change that status because now they're deportable again. So they've broken their status, right? They've broken the law while under status, and now they're no longer allowed to be in the country at that point. And so then you'll see what ICE does. That's kind of how that works. But bro,
What?
speaking about that, you were in LA. I saw some of the video footage. I don't want to touch too much on the immigration side of things with ICE and the current kind of craziness that's going on.
What we do at Ironclad doesn't happen by accident. It exists because a small number of brands choose to stand behind us. These are brands that believe in the same things we do: craftsmanship, independence, and building something real that lasts. Norwood Sawmills is one of those brands. They believe in the people behind the network, the builders, the landowners, the doers, and the craftsmen who value control over their work and pride in how it's done. That alignment matters to us, and it's why we're proud to stand with them. Norwood Sawmills designs portable sawmills that give you the ability to make your own lumber on your land, on your timeline, without sacrificing quality or performance. For over 30 years, they've been building equipment that's engineered to last and designed to grow with you, whether you're a serious DIY builder or a professional sawyer. If you care about quality, if you care about independence, and if you're considering investing in your land, your projects, your long-term capability, Norwood is worth your time. We encourage you to support the brands that support this network. To learn more, explore their portable sawmills and talk directly to their team at norwoodsawmills.com.
Throughout our conversation, I just see the kind of the evolution of from the Mexican side of smuggling into the country from the border, and then it kind of trickles into the main city. You know what I mean? And it's wild how it goes because there's a loss in translation, right? People don't realize what's happening in the border, the cartels that are supporting this effort of smuggling people into the country, the potential for all these sleeper cells that are coming into the country. They don't see that side of it, and so they don't know how to defend that, or they're almost blind to that. So then they think the argument is what's happening here in America all the way inland, but it's like, no, this started thousands of miles away in this corrupt kind of organization where they're making money off of illegal immigration and also in support of potentially destroying America from within. And then it gets to where we are now in LA. There's no kings, and hey, I don't have no problems with protesters by any means. Protest whatever you want, but when it starts to become violent, when it starts to become this rhetoric of kill ICE or whatnot, like then we're starting to have a problem. There's a disconnect from reality. There's a
Mhm.
disconnect that people don't see of the corruption that happens from our borders and the potential threats that come from the borders to now, they talk about this, illegal immigration, the issues that you're seeing. Yeah, it is a crazy time, but when you know from where it starts till here, I think it should diffuse a lot of that tension and say, hey, the problem is our border. The problem is these cartels. The problem is these countries that are trying to destroy America from within.
And then that's what I try to do, bro, with my reporting is highlight that. I know under Biden, the amount of messages that I got from people saying, "I had no idea cartels were doing this to people." And I just thought, "Oh, yeah, I just want an open border. Everyone could come to the US and it'll be great." I didn't know about this deep, dark underworld. But that's what I think, which is like the majority of America, they don't know about the issue, how it starts from the border and everything, and how it kind of trickles out. And this is why we see what we see. It's just a crazy time. And the thing is, it's like these federal agents in LA have like literally nothing to do with what these protesters are angry at. Um, but a lot of people just, it's also too like Americans are just, especially these young Americans, they almost are seeking purpose, and this is like an outlet to unleash it. I wish I could take all these Americans to the border to see to see the things that I witnessed, the children that I found, the women sexually abused, and all the
Yes.
way to this angle, which is these men coming from all these countries who have we don't know what their intentions are. Maybe they are great individuals, but we don't know why you destroying your identification. So that's one thing that we are continue to highlight. Um, but I think we're still going to see some of these protests heat up, especially getting closer to that May 1st May Day, and then we'll kind of see how things turn out after that. But I think when it comes to national security, this is the real issue. This is the number one concern. And like I said, I spoke to U.S. Border Patrol and the local law enforcement in Texas, and they're extremely alarmed that all of a sudden, things were very quiet on the border. All of a sudden, they're getting a little increase, a little surges here and there of these individuals from, once again, all over the world, and extremely concerning when you have the individuals now coming uh, from Iran. Not only that, though, Vince, it's like the women too, because they're all been essentially instructed to get pregnant, have that baby on American soil, no matter what, have that baby on American soil. And once they have that baby on American soil, it's like, come on, man, they're like they're never gonna be deported after that. And then they're a
Yeah.
US citizen and all that. And that also it's kind of funny. I mean, not funny, but it ties into the CJNG story where like the new leader was born in Orange County, California. So
Yes.
he's a US citizen. And then so it's just one of those things. So I'm gonna continue to highlight this issue, especially like I said, I've always been very passionate about the special interest alien just because there are so many angles um to that story and especially now that the country's at war and who knows how long the US is gonna be entangled in the Middle East again.
Yeah, man. It's crazy to think that some of these special interests, illegal immigrants who've come across that border, who have bad intentions for America, they keep their head down and no one's paying attention to it. But the noise is the argument between Americans and Americans fighting
Yes.
over the it's a like it's the wrong fight right now. We should be paying attention to these potential threats. We know they're here. It's a scary time. I think everyone should be more vigilant about this subject. I love that you brought this to the table. When you talk about Iran and China, those are the two right now my concerns as well. And I think we should be more trying to be vigilant about those two individual groups right now, since they see us as a threat to them, and they're slowly infiltrating our country through the borders and hiding. They're not the ones making noise; it's everyone else, and
Exactly.
that is a crazy thing, brother.
And look,
Dude, thank you so much, bro. Thank you for all whatever. Anything else you want to tell the audience before we dip out of here, man? But this is a crazy story, man.
yeah, follow guys right now on X, Ventura Report. We're breaking all the news there on real time. I just barely started, guys, my first YouTube channel, just my last thing, and then the word reports. So Ventura Reports, and then that's where you could actually find the full exclusive report where we kind of uncovered this Mosque, the special interest alien Mexican cartel angle with Corey Gutero there, and we got a lot of stuff coming. The big thing right now, I'm working on, Vince. It's gonna take a while, but we're piecing it up little by little. Is highlighting the missing person crisis of Mexico. So if you don't, for people who don't know, there's over 100,000 people that have been disappeared or kidnapped in Mexico. The U.S., I mean, the Mexican government and their law enforcement have essentially given up on finding these people. Many of these people are essentially disappeared or kidnapped by cartels. The young men, boys, are essentially forced into the cartel, sometimes to be drug runners, mules, or even hitmen. And if you reject or decline that, they literally would just murder you. Um, Really quick, if for anyone, just Google the ranch in Jalisco. Some of the new details that are coming out that are extremely heartbreaking. The one that's still, ah, it just it's just so weird to say, but out of 10 of the young boys that that Jalisco New Generation recruited to be hitmen, they killed 8 of them. Every time. And um, once again, it's all connected to the disappearing crisis. So it's one thing I want to highlight: the young women who are disappearing are normally pushed into the sex trafficking, dark underworld that the cartel has them controlled under. So I just Vince left Baja California, where I went embedded with parent search groups. So it's to the point where parents themselves have to look for their own kids that
Yeah.
are missing. So I just went embedded with them. Very powerful storytelling. The day that I actually went embedded with them, we got denied a Mexican military escort because the cartel normally shoots or targets these parents for searching for their kids. We were supposed to have protection. We were declined, but we still went. And so we got reporting from that. We got a lot more coming up. So the missing person crisis of Mexico. We're gonna have, like I said, really, really good reporting. It could be a long series, but piecing that up. So that's really quick one I wanted to highlight and for everyone to kind of pay attention to.
Absolutely, bro. That sounds great. Yeah, I'm excited about that. We actually had a woman on here probably about a year ago who lost 2 of her sons as well. They're both missing, and she's still out there trying to find them as well. We'll try and connect you with her as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And then once again, Vince, thanks for having me on, bro. Always glad to be on this platform and always kind of share the latest what we got on the ground.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to Borderland Narcosis, an Ironclad original presented by First Form. Go get your First Form supplements at firstform.com/borderland. Take care, y'all.